Good morning to you on this Wednesday morning. It's the 14th of May, and we are postured here in Johannesburg. If you have joined us, you are on the air with the Fifth Connection, where we are talking through the storyline of the book that was written to the Rome away from Rome. Philippi was the home away from Rome. It was a Roman city deeply imbibed in imperial Roman culture. And Paul writes 10 years later, after he had visited this area, he writes a letter to them about the importance and the centrality of what we have come to call today mindfulness. Let this mind be in you, because if his mind imbibes, is drawn into my mind, joy will flow, unity will happen as the assembly together pursues truth in their edification model. So in chapter 1, we saw in our previous episode that mindfulness inspires connections, because mindfulness is embedded inside of a social construct. It's embedded inside of a culture. We are not walking around, number one, like zombies, and number two, as those who are unanchored. We are grounded very deeply into the warp and woof of a culture. And our tribal relationality is going to show. My tribal relationality shows. Ek is 'n Kaapse kleerling. And it shows. It also sounds. Listen to my accent. Well, some are very suspicious of their cultural and tribal grounding and relationality. As believers, we are called upon to embrace where we live, embrace our identity, but don't become egoically attached to it. Use it as a bridge to make impact for the gospel. Don't tie yourself down and have your ego choke you to death because of your cultural label or your tribal label. So I'm going to talk you through verse 12 to verse 18. And now you need to get the flow of what's happening, because mindfulness flows in the context of community. As we are cordial with one another and as we collaborate with one another inside of that assembly, especially when it is gathered. There is cordiality, there's collaboration, and in collaboration we are thinking, feeling, and loving together. Thinking together, corporate solidarity, grounding ourselves in the process of wrestling with our script. It's called the scriptures. Our feelings are primed by the scriptures. Our calibrated and our loving is intensified by our encountering or the continuity of contact we have with one another in the context of community. Now, continuity. Community is about continuity. Most of us grew up in very fractured cultural situations, and we allow that fragmentation and fractures to influence us very, very deeply. But what Paul is going to show in the text is that it doesn't have to be that way. We can still have continuity in the midst of unnerving realities. And verse 12 to verse 26 talks about what those unnerving realities look like. And in spite of them, community can happen and continuity can happen. Don't ever use your background as an excuse. Can I repeat that? Don't ever use your background, how you grew up, and where you grew up as an excuse for irresponsibility. One thing you can be sure of, you didn't grow up in a vacuum. You grew up in the context of the real world, and don't deny that. I think people from my cultural grouping tend to want to deny where they come from and their identity because we don't like the tribal connection that has made its way into our ancestry. But we're very proud of our European connections and our French connections. Yes, even our Italian connections. So continuity is important because it can function in the midst of confinement. Even when there's confinement, people are confined to spaces and places. The Group Areas Act in this country confined people of color to particular geographic locations. We could not move freely after 6 o'clock in so-called white communities. The Apostle Paul was confined. He was imprisoned. Listen to what this pericope says. Paul says, "But I would have that you understand, brethren, that the things which have happened to me have fallen out rather unto the furtherance of the gospel, so that my," listen to it, "bonds, my imprisonment in Christ are manifest in the palace," that's the Praetorian Guard, "and in all other spaces." The word places does not appear in the original text, but it is put there to show that not only in the palace have I made impact through my confinement, but also outside of the palace. And many of the brothers in the Lord, waxing confident by my confinement, my bonds, my restrictions. Oh, how we moan and groan about our restrictions, our health restrictions, our dietary restrictions, our financial constraints. But Paul says there are other brothers in the Lord that are becoming confident because of how I respond in the midst of my confinement. They are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Don't allow your circumstances to restrict you and choke the living daylights out of you. And moan, "Well, I don't have purpose. I never have a thing to do." Well, get with it and get with the thing to do. Paul couldn't do much. He was in a dungeon in a Roman palace, right? The palace was the Praetorian Guard, right? But he says, my confinement did not become a discontinuity when it came to community. Others outside of my circumstances were watching me and listening to what I have to say and taking their cue from me. How are you cueing yourself? How are you communicating your tight place that you are in? What are you saying about it? What if you think that's bad enough? It gets worse. Verse 15 to verse 18. Not only is his confinement an opportunity for continuity of contact in community, but the criticism that he levels at those who are hostile to the gospel. Watch what he says. Verse 15. Some indeed preach Christ even of envy and strife, and others also of goodwill. The one preached Christ of contention, supposing to add affliction to my bonds, but the other of love, knowing that I am set for the defense of the gospel. What then? Notwithstanding every way, whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached, therein and therein do I rejoice, yea, and will rejoice. He has a very distinct criticism to level at those who preach out of good motives, but also those who preach out of skewed motives. Watch how wide and how broad this man's understanding of how God operates, how it works. Watch his understanding. God can hit a straight blow with a crooked stick. That does not mean we must not work at being precise and careful in how we communicate gospel. But he says those who are preaching of contention and those who are preaching out of goodwill. He says, man, my big concern is whether in pretense or in truth, Christ is preached. That's the issue. And sometimes we get off on side issues, on rabbit trails and rabbit holes and detours, and you name it, except sticking with the main agenda. Is the word getting out? So confinement doesn't hem him in, nor does his criticism of those who have good versus skewed motives about preaching the gospel. Now he gets into that long section, verse 19 to verse 26. Nor would his crisis, nor should crises in our lives prevent us from maintaining continuity of contact in the context of our communities where we live when it comes to being mindful. Let his mind be our mind. Let us be soaked and let us be marinated in the context of the mind of Christ. So let's start out on the third paragraph. Neither confinement, nor crisis, nor criticism. That's 15 to 18. Now 19 to 26. What's the crisis in 19 to 26? Well, listen to it. For I know that this shall turn to my salvation. What? The preaching of Christ. The criticism that I've leveled about the preaching from wrong motives or right motives and my confinement will turn to my deliverance. It's the idea behind the word salvation. Through your prayers and the supply of the Spirit of Christ. How is that? Well, he says, according to my earnest expectation and my hope, that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by life or by death. He's got the two bookends of life and living. Life and death, and everything else in between, because nothing else falls outside of the two bookends. Life and death. So no matter what my circumstance, my mental state, my physical state, my family condition, he says, Christ shall be magnified in my physical body, whether it be by life or by death. Now, how is that? Here is the explanatory for, F-O-R. It's a gar in the Greek text. And he explains it. For to me to live is Christ. For to me, note, to me to live is Christ. Text just reads, for to me to live, Christ. And to die, gain. That's what it's about. Living and dying has its benefits. And they have different kinds of payoffs. But if I live in the flesh, this is the fruit of my labor, yet what I shall choose, there's that funny word again. I know not. I what not, says the King James Version. What not means I do not know. I don't know. I what not. I choose. What I shall choose, I don't know. For I'm in a tight place. I'm in a strait betwixt two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. But the other option is to abide in the flesh is more needful for you. And having this confidence, what confidence? Confidence, verse 25, that I shall abide and continue with you all for your furtherance and joy of faith. I'll be around to impact others positively. Are you just playing for time? Are you reaching for the bench because your health is not that great? Your mind is not that great? Your hair is falling out, and a lot of other things are falling out. Maybe your false teeth as well. But to keep this in mind, that you are here to make impact on the lives of others. And it's not wrong to say, I'm here to make the life of others better. Some of us think that's a very sort of ungodly goal. We are here to be witnesses for Christ, and we sound very sanctimonious at that point. Well, how about just very simply on a day-to-day basis? You are here for the benefit of others. Well, that's a killer. But he says, I have confidence that I shall continue with you all for your furtherance and joy of faith. Yes, Lord, but what about me? Well, he continues to say in verse 26, that your rejoicing may be more abundant in Jesus Christ for me by my coming to you. In a sense, we are here to make others look good. Not deceptively or in a flattering kind of way, but in a real way. Make our kids look good. Make our husbands and our wives look good. Our grandkids. It's about personal voluntary sacrifice for the benefit of others. That's what love is. Personal voluntary sacrifice for the benefit of others. And you're going to see in coming episodes that that's what the mind of Christ is about. Personal voluntary sacrifice for the benefit of OTHERS, others. And God is a way of taking care of us when we don't fixate upon ourselves. That doesn't mean we are to take care of ourselves as the first person for whom we are responsible, because I am responsible for me. But my continuity of contact in the context of community is not stayed off or pushed away because of confinement, criticism, and crisis. I won't allow that. Are you allowing that in your life? Your situation and your station in life to become the barrier, the blockage to experience what it means to live inside of a social construct in which you are embedded, your culture, your family, stuff we can't run away from. You may wish it were different. Well, it ain't, right? And so this morning, to take courage, do not allow confinement, nor criticism, nor crisis in your life to prevent you from maintaining your continuity of contact, because you are here for a much wider and broader purpose. How about taking that up today? For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. It ain't over until God says it's over. So I trust that you will have a good day as you go with God. Goodbye for now.